need to use these earpieces if I'm not mistaken. So bear with us. Hopefully we get this right. Okay.
So my question is to Gil of One Campaign. So when you look at the mandate of One Campaign, it's basically to empower people through emancipation of poverty and diseases. So you make mention of the fact that Africa doesn't have much of energy. But when you look at, I'm from Nigeria and I'm a researcher, when you look at when Nigeria discovered oil in 1956, you will understand that the technology they would have used to refine those oil was criminalized. It was called illegal bunkering. And a lot of multinationals benefited from this. And this particular crude oil or the fossil fuel that powers even Switzerland comes from Nigeria because that's the bilateral trade agreement we have, and equally United States. So as One Campaign, how could they be able to create public awareness so that citizens of those developing countries, especially Africa, that is being discussed in every public forum because we are tired of the pity game. Mm-hmm. We are tired of, giving to the world and crumbles are given back to Africa. So how could One Campaign be able to create that awareness so that citizens could be able to know that what most multinationals take from Africa is what powers most of the industrialized world? Then secondly, how can they be able to create awareness to make their diplomats in Africa to behave the way they should behave? Thank you very much.
Thanks for the question. And look, I think there are a number of dimensions to this. And the question is mainly about you've got countries that produce raw materials that many of the rest of us depend on, but you get less benefit in the country itself, in this case, Nigeria with a long history of oil export. I think there are a few things. One is the terms under which those exports are agreed. And I think one space to watch going forward that's been mentioned, I think, Flora, you mentioned it, is if you look at the raw materials that are needed for the production of batteries, Africa's got a serious corner on the market. The terms under which those raw materials are exploited domestically and internationally and traded internationally is going to be absolutely key. And one of the things I would say in response to your question is, how does Nigerian citizens, anybody, take the lessons learned from the way that oil deals were negotiated? But I think the second that we focus on as the One Campaign is citizen awareness and accountability. So we've got organized communities all over the world, including a team in Nigeria, that looks at things like how deals are done, where there's corruption, where there's transparency, where there's not, where the benefits go, where they don't go. We do the same thing in northern markets, because I think that's one of the key ingredients here that we often miss, is that when citizens are aware of these things and can weigh in, it actually does make a difference. We often think that it doesn't. My experience, having served in government 3 times and been an activist and advocate on the outside in between each time, is that even though it's easy to think that our voices don't matter, they actually make a huge difference. So what I would say to you is take the lessons from the oil sector in Nigeria, and I would say the lessons internationally in how that oil is exploited, but also domestically, because Nigeria produces enough oil that it should have greater access to electricity across the continent, and say, all right, what are the lessons to be taken for that in future negotiations over now natural gas and some of these rare earths and other minerals going forward? It's a good question. On making diplomats behave, I'm not sure I have the answer to that one, but I've tried to do my best when I was one.
We've got a question over there, the gentleman with his hand. Yeah, go ahead.
Who tells you I'm a gentleman? So someone just asked